Okay, so we're going to get started. Welcome to this discussion with Karen Jaime of her book, The Queer Nuyorican. And welcome to the Bureau of General Services Queer Division. That's the space you find yourselves in. The Bureau, we like to say, is a government agency for a government that does not yet exist. And this is the service that we provide, holding this space for queer books and for queer culture. I am the co-founder. My name is Greg Newton. Along with my partner, Donnie Jokum. We founded the Bureau in 2012, and we've been here at the LGBT. Thank you, we'll take it. Yeah. We've been here at the LGBT Center since 2014, and we're really happy to be back open again after you know what. So we are an all-volunteer organization. We have a suggested donation of $10, so I'm going to pass the bag around, and there's change in here. I know some people donated online, so thank you very much for that. And if you're not able to donate, don't worry. And if money is tight and you want to buy a book, you should hold on to your money and buy a book. So with that said, I'll pass that around. And if you're not already on our email list and you would like to be, you can sign up for that at the register. We send an email out every other Monday that lists our upcoming events. And we have a very busy April, May, and June. Somehow we're going to make it through. So thank you so much for coming tonight. And I'm going to get started by introducing Karen, and then we'll jump right in to the presentation. So Karen Jaime is Assistant Professor of Performing and Media Arts and Latino Studies at Cornell University. Karen is a former Institute for Citizens and Scholars Career Enhancement Junior Faculty Fellow, formerly the Woodrow Wilson, a former Rockefeller Foundation Research Fellow and Chancellor's Postdoctoral Research Associate at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and is currently a Mellon HIDVL Scholar in Residence at the Hemispheric Institute of Performance and Politics at NYU. Karen's monograph, The Queer Nuyorican, Racialized Sexualities and Aesthetics in Loisaida, argues for a re-examination of the Nuyorican Poets Cafe as a historically queer space, both in terms of sexualities and performance practices. Alongside her critical writing, Karen is also an accomplished spoken word performance artist who served as the host curator of the Friday Night Poetry Slam at the world-renowned Nuyorican's Poets Cafe, 2003 to 2005. So please welcome Karen Jaime.
Thank you all for coming. I'll just do that. So welcome, thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank Greg. What is your partner's name? Donnie, thank you. Grab some drinks, don't forget to tip. Again and again and again. And all of the volunteers here with the Bureau of General Services Queer Division for their support and help with making this event happen. I know a lot of people like to speak extemporaneously, that's not me. I'll forget stuff, I'll trail off, we'll be here longer than we need to be. This way it's tight, and I can give you an overview of not just what I'm gonna say, but how long it's gonna take. I'm that audience member. I need to know where we're going. And I need to know how we're going to get there. So this is what we're doing. As an artist and scholar, my research, teaching, and cultural productions evidence a deep commitment to analyzing the representational politics that render queer communities of color invisible. I aim to document the often ignored contributions of queer communities of color to performances of the everyday, those that are staged and those that are mediatized. Highlighting those omissions for me is essential because they provide examples of possibilities for queer survival, in particular, queer of color survival. For example, in the Queer Nuyorican, I challenge the heterosexist framing of the cafe as predominantly cis male and ethnically Nuyorican. So historically, the space has always been written about as it was very straight, cis, Puerto Rican men, and I'm challenging that. I'm saying that's not actually what was going on there. I analyze how through music, theater, video, and drag performances, queer artists of color at the cafe devise cultural productions that make visible queer histories and performance practices that in turn inform contemporary artistic productions as activist practice. In many ways, the Queer Nuyorican began with a class. Poetry and Politics in the Americas that I took as an undergrad at Cornell. It was in this class that I first read about the cafe, how it was founded during the heyday of New York's Puerto Rican community's nationalist liberation movements, and I learned that it began in circa 1973 with informal gatherings in poet-writer Miguel Algarin's living room on East 6th Street between Avenues B and C, in the Lower East Side neighborhood of Loisaida. In the beginning, Algarin, a former professor of Shakespeare at Rutgers University, brings together people as diverse as Nuyorican poetry icon Pedro Pietri, well known for his performance of Puerto Rican Obituary during the takeover of the People's Church, and Miguel Michael Piñero, a poet, playwright, and actor, and West Indian visual artist, poet, and writer Lois Elaine Griffith. It was also in this class that I first became aware of the ethnic marker Nuyorican and its reclamation by Algarin and Piñero as Nuyorican. So that's how it was originally spelled. This was a phonetic spelling that doesn't emerge till a little bit later in the 1970s, and it really speaks to the Puerto Rican community in New York City and in Loisaida, and it was a phonetic way, right? Like that's how the community said it, and they're like, we're not Nuyorican, that's a made-up term used to describe us. This is actually how we call ourselves, and the difference between the Lower East Side East Village and the ethnic enclave of Loisaida. So if you go to the East Side, a lot of marketing made it Alphabet City, the East Village. We think of, CBGBs and all of that, but within that, there's an ethnic enclave, predominantly Nuyorican, predominantly immigrant communities, right? And that's Loisaida. Again, another phonetic spelling that emerges through Spanglish. Looking back, it was the politics inherent in the founding and naming of the small performance space in downtown New York City in the early 1970s, where people of color and other counterculture artists came together to write and perform within a class-based and ethnically marked neighborhood that first appealed to me as a young college student, coming to more critically understand her race, gender, class, and sexuality. It was the conversations initiated by these early poets and performers that modeled for me the type of artist activism that I hope to undertake, and I made it my mission to visit and hopefully perform there someday. So I begin the book by describing how ecstatic I was on a Friday night in 1997 when a group of friends and I decided to go to the cafe after having dinner in the West Village. I can still remember the anticipation of waiting on that line to go in, the butterflies in my stomach, all of these feelings that I had walking from West 4th Street and 6th Avenue, right across the park, trying to make my way over there with a bunch of friends after having a few drinks and perhaps other forms of imbibement, not really knowing how we're going to get there, knowing that there was going to be a line, and getting ready to act foolish once we got there. And first visiting the space, I was taken aback by the size of the space. That's actually the bar, right? It still has not changed. It's still not that size. And the type of work that I saw performed. So how many of you have ever been to a poetry slam? Right, well, I don't have to ask. I do want to give a shout out right now to Felice Bell, who was the host of the Friday night poetry slam at the Nuyorican. Before I took over, she trained me in there. And actually the person before that was Keith Roach. So when I came in, I was introduced to people performing poetry in a competition, 3 rounds, 5 randomly selected poets, 5 groups of randomly selected judges who often respond when asked to be judges. But I don't know anything about poetry. How do I rate it? I'm like, you rate what you like what touches you. You don't have to have an MFA in poetry to be a judge. So a lot of the work that I saw performed there at that time was work by people who were trying to appeal to an audience by highlighting things that they found recognizable. So in 1997, it was the sort of Erykah Badu, neo soul moment. So there was a woman, and I'm going to tell the story. So I'm there, and my friends and I are chosen to be judges. I just mentioned before that we had some drinks. We were acting foolish. And so we're sitting and I'm like, yes, we can do this. And this woman gets up with a head wrap and is like, you to us, you enter us. Because I'm a woman, man. I'm a woman. Thank you. And then he says, hold up your scores, judges, hold up your scores. And I was like, 3.25 on a scale of 1 to 10. And I held that up proudly. I got a lot of booze. a lot of booze at that moment. But I was like, no, her work stinks. And that was the type of work that I was like, listen, I had not been on that stage. I had only read about that space, but I knew that that was not the type of work that space was founded to sort of promote. That was not that type of writing that was more worried about the score than the content was not what I thought the space should be doing. And examining that history, that really cemented that for me. And then Keith asked me, oh, do you think you could do better? And I'm cocky, so I was like, yes, I can. And then that kind of leads to all of this. So at that moment, I'm confronted by the uterus full man moment. And I'm thinking that maybe it was the competition inherent in the poetry slam that evening. Maybe it was the changing neighborhood surrounding the cafe. Maybe it was a combination of both, resulting in this increasing forgetfulness or ignorance regarding the history of the space. I wasn't entirely sure why some younger poets understood the history and created work that reflected the initial politics of the space, although they were not necessarily ethnically Nuyorican, while others demonstrated an investment in creating work that was about form rather than content, about getting tens during the poetry slam, and performing a version of consciousness that was recognizable to mainstream audiences, while their writing and performance didn't really do anything but reify stereotypes rather than challenge them. As a queer feminist, I was troubled by the emphasis and focus on the cis male founders and performers and their framing as heterosexual. Cis women were rarely mentioned, although we can thank Patricia Herrera's book, Nuyorican Feminist Performance, for filling in that gap, and queer poets were often discussed as the exceptions, although I was to later learn through my involvement in the Nuyorican community that a number of the foundational poets and performers were actually queer, although they used the term fluid. But throughout the book, I also focus on how the changes outside of the cafe due to gentrification and a renewed economic investment in the neighborhood, alongside the popularity of poetry slam as a performance genre, led to a change in the people both attending and performing in the space. So that's actually an image outside of the cafe in 1981. So that's what, yeah, that's what we This is before the installation of the wind guards, probably, it's definitely after 97, maybe around 2000, 2001, cleaned up a bit. And then this is what it looks like now. So we can definitely see sort of these changes. The cafe was no longer a primarily local community space. Also, while Nuyorican as an ethnic marker initially was used to refer to people born and or raised in New York City of Puerto Rican descent, it started being used to refer to poets and performers affiliated with the cafe. Nuyorican then became both ethnic marker and arguably a brand, which for me wasn't unproblematic. Was there a way to recognize poets and performers who aligned themselves with the original mission and politics of the cafe, who weren't necessarily Puerto Rican? What about queerness? How did it impact the type of work produced? Those questions ultimately led to my research and to the completion of this book, where I examined the historical, political, and cultural conditions under which the term Nuyorican, uppercase N, shifted from a race ethnic identity marker to Nuyorican, lowercase n, an aesthetic practice and political poetical alliance. So I want to be very clear that I don't ever want to sort of take away from the specificity of the Nuyorican experience, the history, the politics, the activism, but I do want to sort of trouble the way that it's been used, like, oh, if you were a poet at the Nuyorican and there was a flyer for an event, it would be like, Nuyorican poets are performing. And I'm like, no, they aren't. Poets from the cafe are performing, but Nuyorican poets aren't necessarily performing. So I'm really interested in sort of unpacking that and thinking about it along the lines of aesthetics, what we find pleasurable, what we find beautiful about the work. The Nuyorican aesthetic queers fixed definitions of Nuyorican identity by recognizing and including queer poets and performers of color whose writing and performance build upon the politics inherent in the cafe's founding. So who do I write about? I'm just gonna give you all a brief chapter overview, little clips, because I always need transition, I get bored. Thus, in chapter 1, Walking Poetry in Loisaida, I juxtapose the relationship between Nuyorican Poets Cafe co-founder Miguel Piñero's writing, performance, and sexuality with the contemporary changes to Loisaida's demography and culture. As evidenced in the clip I will share with you, Pinheiro employs a distinct methodology and performance approach that continues to leave its imprint and fuel contemporary poets and performers at the cafe.
So, what? Oops, I'm having trouble with the mouse too. What's going on? Yeah, hold on a second. Okay, so it was the first one, right?
Yes.
Okay, let me do this. Ah. What happened? This one. There we go. Oh, but I do need to share so if people can. Ay, 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 ay. There we go.
Field of an old being found in the valley with the DDT. His legs were left in Vietnam. His arms were bound in sing. His scalp is on mixed in his belt. His blood stains the streets of the ghetto. His eyes are still looking for Jesus to come down on some cloud and make everything all right when Jesus died in Attica. Good night, my love. It's time to go. He died.
I'll keep sharing. And so here we see, like, if you look at what he's wearing and what he looks like, we could very easily walk around Williamsburg, the East Village, and fit in, even though that was the 1970s. So there's very much an aesthetic. There's a performance affect that you can also see in poetry slam, the snapping fingers, the very much the directed, the pointing. So I'm really trying to think through what he was doing in the 1970s and how that's really informing a lot of the contemporary slam poetry and the contemporary sort of artistic productions alongside the register of queerness, right? Really thinking of it as a queer gesture. Chapter 2, this is the remix, Regie Cabico's Filipino Shuffle. I focus on poet, performer, and cultural activist Regie Cabico's queer Filipino reimagining of the miniseries The Thornbirds and of the films Hollywood Shuffle and Monsters Ball. I explore how he utilizes humor in the form of parody and camp, alongside the hip hop practices of sampling and remixing to articulate a Nuyorican aesthetic. I'm gonna share a clip from Filipino Shuffle that's a riff on Hollywood Shuffle, and an excerpt from a TED Talk where he performs one of his most well-recognized poems, Check One. And I should say that Regie was gonna be here, kind of like in Ghost here, but he's here virtually, so he's gonna chime in a bit. Oh, I need to go back to the PowerPoint.
Oops, what just happened?
Here we go. I should have gotten analog and held up pictures.
Why is it not? Okay.
Like the corner of my eye. And afterwards, she wouldn't sing anything else. She just run back into the kitchen, laugh like a smurf, and make more pancit noodles. At night, my mom would make me and my 3 younger sisters bring a rosary in front of a 4-foot Mary statue standing on a huge green serpent. I call the statue Our Lady of Loch Ness.
We'll stop there. And here is a clip. No. I know, Greg. I'm really putting you to work.
Karen, I love it. I love it. I feel like Cher watching this yourself. Like, wow.
Stop share so I can go to YouTube. Hi, Regie. Wait, Regie?
Is it this one?
Yes.
Okay.
That was so weird. This is an item.
The government asks me
Yes.
to shut down if I want money. I say, how could you ask me to be one race? I stand proudly before you, a fierce Filipino who knows how to belt hard gospel songs played to African drums at a Catholic mass, and loving the music to suffering beats, and like.
Circle back to the. Okay.
Sorry, there's a lot of. Right. Well, you're coming up next, so that's look at how that works.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, and in chapter 3, Tens Across the Board, the Glam Slam at the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, I focus on the Glam Slam at the Cafe from 1998 to 2008. As a queer happening, this event brought together the competitive spoken word slam poetry scene and the ball culture communities. So think about a house ball and a poetry slam. So poets walk the runway, and instead of just voguing against one another, they perform poetry in categories, including Best Love Poem and Fire Engine Red, and Best Wigga Poem, amongst others. So what I'm gonna share with you now are 2 clips. One clip is wonderful that he's here. He was reading the rules at the event many moons ago. Mother was serving. And then there's another, the following clip is a moment of queer joy, right? Queerness is often framed as like, oh, it's so sad if we're on a TV show at this moment, nobody's gonna love you. You like somebody, they don't like you. So it's this sort of tragic moment. And I'm really interested in thinking about moments of queer joy, in particular, queer joy for people of color, right? So how do we see those examples, and how does seeing those examples really provide us with different ways of envisioning survival? Not just, oh, I made it through today, but how can I imagine a celebratory moment?
I don't even know what's in the show.
Yes, you do.
It's me. Already I got national participation. Get ready to go. I have some rules and regulations. No more than 3 minutes per performance. No repeat poems. No repeat poems. No repeat poems. I get a message. I am feeling shady, honey. Shady, boy, heterosexual, shady, snobby, not correct, ill-mannered. Obnoxious. Lack of decorum. The fucking vocabulary. Always give it to my child, Robert Xavier. He always gives me the proper right words to say.
Do you remember now? Do you remember now?
Wow.
that moment is that I was able to get the picture for the cover of the book, right? So for me, that moment is really important to sort of unpack and analyze and think through, right? We think about the time period in which that happened. We think about the fact that this was documented on Homovisiones, that public access television show that broadcast in four boroughs, missing Staten Island because they didn't want to show this, right? And the ways that it really focused on, you know, queer, in particular, gay men of color, right? Black and brown men in the Bronx, but also it also included women, it included trans women, trans men, and really spotlighted those communities for a particular period of time, right? So it was really important to, like, where are those examples now? So really kind of thinking through that. Chapter 4, Black Crackers Chasing Rainbows, Hip Hop Minstrelsy, Queer Futurity, and Trans Multiplicity. I focus on the work of Ellison Glenn, also known as Black Cracker, a contemporary transgender spoken word performance artist and musician, a very dear friend, we share birthday, but really thinking about their work and how they moved from poetry to music production. They're now based in Berlin. Just looking at how the Nuyorican sort of influenced that and how it's really moved beyond the US to sort of Germany. So I'm gonna have to, and this is the last time I promise, I'm gonna go into, I just wanna share the last clip. I feel like this computer's fancier than. So,
Is it this one?
yes,
All
no,
right.
we have to just press. I don't mean sound.
The night's black, skin's white, skin's brown, she's gray, the heart is blue.
You might have to stop share.
Yeah.
Reshare a new window.
Oh, is that what's
Yeah.
happening? Why can't you read my mind?
I didn't want to interrupt, but.
You were so great about that, 'cause we would have kept going, except for, my partner was like,
Wait. And so. Stop share.
and this is my first in-person book event, so I'm a little glitchy. Thank you so much for your patience and understanding. I'm toggling on Zoom. So on Zoom, it's like, in person, I'm a little,
Yeah, it's there we go.
but most of you know me, so you know that this is how I generally am. Yeah, yes. We'll just stop there. It's a theory. I entitled the conclusion The Open Room because it is the name of an evolving event, which originally served as the open mic at the cafe, but which now denotes the gathering that brings the festivities of the Friday night poetry slam to a close. Unlike the poetry slam competition held earlier in the evening, the open room provides a space for the sharing of work. There are no scores, just applause of the small audience that stays behind at the end of a long Friday night deems the poet worthy. People who feel too nervous, scared, or apprehensive about slamming tend to workshop their writing during the open room. This event connects the organic poetic gatherings of the 1970s with a contemporary audience. The open room at the cafe brought and continues to bring together those poets invested in spoken word poetry as a way to imagine other ways of being. And that's part of what I hope to accomplish with this text. Open up a conversation on queer performance histories as ways to imagine possibilities for queer survival. Thank you. Kind of organic before we use terms like organic when we mean like, but so I have folks joining me, and first one is my dear, dear, dear Arnaldo Cruz-Malavé.
You can read. I'm happy to.
Who's professor of Spanish and Comparative Lit and associate director of Fordham's Latin American and Latinx Studies Institute. He is the author of Queer Latino Testimonio, Keith Haring, and Juanito Xtravaganza, Hard Tales, a book about the relationship between art and Latinx popular culture in the gentrifying New York of the 1980s. El Primitivo Implorante, a study of the intersections of nationalism and queer sexuality in the prose fiction of the Cuban author José de Samalima, editor of the anthology of short stories by the Puerto Rican queer diasporic author Manuel Ramos Otero, Cuentos Completos, and co-editor with Martin Manalanza of Queer Globalization, Citizenship, and the Afterlife of Colonialism. He has been the recipient of the NEH and the Ford Foundation Fellowships, a visiting professor at Harvard, and a former member of the board of directors of the Center for Lesbian and Gay Studies of CUNY's Graduate Center and Fordham University Press. So let's give it up to Arnaldo.
Thank you for those unnecessary words.
Not unnecessary, we need to celebrate each other.
I'm so pleased to be here because this is a beautiful book that I kind of know really in the as a manuscript and later as a book, and I'm also so pleased to be here for Karen because it is a beautiful, beautiful book. People were asking me to talk about what kind of intervention does this book make, and I'll be very brief because most of it you've said already. But let me just say that that the kind of an intervention that I see that your extraordinary book makes is we could call a queering of the poet. The Nuyorican, the Queer Nuyorican, the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, we know as an institution that was founded by queers and sustained by queers with their dreams, desires, love, and hard work. Yet, as you mentioned, it has often been delimited and contained by a homosocial, heteronormative, even patriarchal communal definition. So what kind of intervention does this book, in a sense, it queers the queer, it realizes or it expands the traditions invoked by the institution. It accomplishes or realizes a sort of opening of the traditions of the Nuyorican Poets Cafe that pries open and expands and recombines and disseminates its traditions, dislocating thus that model of heteronormativity and homosocial bonding that the cafe has been identified with. Dislocating it as an expectation, a horizon of expectations. This is what I love the most about your book is that it is actually a loving engagement with that tradition. It's an engagement with the Nuyorican poets tradition that opens up the queer, but also liberates the radical diversity, that radical diverse traditions of the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. The Queer Nuyorican, Jaime's Queer Nuyorican traces the joyous, boisterous, generous, generative ways the hip-hop inflected queer slam poetry and performance art of the 1990s and 2000s engaged with the Nuyorican Poets Cafe by reconnecting with what you call small case minoritizing Nuyorican aesthetics of experimental, multilingual, code switching, dialogic, intersectional, subversive practices by dialoguing, that is, with one of its most radical aspects, the open room, a kind of undercommons that underlay and sustain the performances and practices of the cafe from its inception in Miguel Algarin's living room to its second incarnation in the gentrifying and globalizing world of Loisaida in the 1990s and 2000s. With the double vision of an insider-outsider, a fan who would rise to become who would rise to the rank of MC of the famous Friday Night Slams, winner of the 2002 Glam Slam competitions, and a skillful ethnographer, meticulous archival researcher, and performers analyst, Jaime, you invite us on a journey into the Nuyorican, where you brilliantly analyze and narrate the ingenious ways, we've seen them, that artists such as Regie, Cabico, Emmanuel Xavier, Andres Chulisi, Rodriguez, establish a dialogue with the traditions of poetic activism and social justice of the cafe, while infusing them with camp, uproarious decolonial people of color camp, Filipino traditions of theatrical fabulosity, hip hop, remixing and sampling, the corporal ballroom language of voguing and shade, and avant-garde cinematic montage, among others, in order to create forms that will effectively respond to the challenges of the times in Loisaida and the cafe. The Queer Nuyorican then not only displaces and liberates queerness from a limited frame and register of community imaginings predicated on masculinist, homosocial, ethno-nationalist bonding and pain. It also expands the histories, horizons, future potential of Loisaida, Latinx activist cultural forms for practitioners and performers as well as researchers. I congratulate you, Karen, for offering us this timely and seductive meditation on the seldom acknowledged wild and wily ways artists of colors in the 1990s and 2000s queered Nuyorican poetic performance by astutely dialoguing and reconnecting with its corporally fluid founding aesthetics, and for offering us the opportunity to immerse ourselves in small case Nuyorican aesthetics as an inclusive, mobile, subversive, contentious, shady, and sassy open room. So congratulations.
Thank you. Been there since the beginning. He really has. He read this one. I had like 3 chapters, some sprinklings of the introduction, a little bit of the conclusion, and I hadn't written chapter 3. That was when we first met to go over and sort of get feedback through a manuscript workshop. That's where I was. Like I hadn't necessarily figured out how I was going to write that chapter. So I wanted to actually, Regie, I hope you're ready because I'm going to read your bio and then you're coming out. So like this.
I'm here, Karen.
So Regie Cabico is a spoken word pioneer, having won the Eureka Poets Cafe Glam Slam in 1993, later taking top prizes in 3 national poetry slams. He's received his BFA at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts and is a 2006 NYU Asian Pacific American Studies Artist in Residence. His television credits include 2 seasons of HBO's Deaf Poetry Jam, NPR's Snap Judgment, and a TEDx talk. His work appears in over 30 anthologies, including Aloud, Voices from the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, Spoken Word Revolution, and the Outlaw Bible of American Poetry. He received the 2006 Writers for Writers Award from Poets and Writers for his work teaching at-risk youth at Bellevue Hospital. As a theater artist, he received 3 New York Innovative Theater Award nominations for his work in Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind, with a win for Best Performance Art Production. Was to be a featured poet at the 2022 Whitney Biennial, resides in Washington, D.C., where he produces Capturing Fire Press and Capturing Fire Slam. So let's give it up for Regie Cabico.
Hey everybody, thank you so much, Karen. Thank you all, and Felice Bell. If Felice Bell is in the house, oh my word. I love Felice Bell. This is so exciting. All right, I'm looking video at myself, and it's a pandemic, and I can't be here because of it. But it's just great to be able to witness a cycle. And especially as we're trying to get out of this pandemic. I'm going to do 3 poems. And Karen, Did you have any specific requests tonight?
Ooh, I like the one about getting a haircut. I don't remember the title.
Okay, spring cut.
Spring
And then
cut.
I didn't know if you want me to do check one or what
I
kind
do,
of.
that's one of my faves. I feel like that's a standard.
Okay.
And you choose whichever one you want to do.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. Okay, cool. So I'm going to start with this. I am doing 30 for 30, which is a poem a day. And this is called Missing the Whitney Biennial Reading. And the Queer Nuyorican reading. I feel like a canceled Broadway show. A chorus boy who stopped their own show because of COVID. CT. I will wear my leopard two-piece and high heels in my living room, watch my tribe read their poems on a live stream feed instead. Sit fever-fatigued on the leather sofa, seeing the painted fingernails of a soot-covered hand over rubble. A Ukrainian makeup artist recognizes the polish. From quarantine, I will prance about my tiny living room and celebrate that I, too, once pounded the pavements of Avenue A in search of an open mic. You could live off $7 an hour cash back then. Red beans and yellow rice were $3 at the Chinese takeouts. How blessed to not be dead. How blessed to be remembered from afar. How blessed to be able to exhale through an unstuffed nostril. Thank you. Thank you. All right. I figured out what kind of guys are attracted to me. They're usually anthropologists. Because they're into my bone structure. See, I'll be at a bar and this guy will whisper in my ear, "You remind me of an Aztec priest." Well, that gives me a boner. Why don't you sacrifice your kitten to Montezuma? Are you Cortez? And then he'll say, "Where are you from?" Baltimore? No. Where are you really from? Baltimore, Maryland? He buys me a glass of draft Bass and asks if I am Japanese. His remarks, "You are the perfect combination of boy and man." No, I am not Japanese, but are you the hip, hot, hung 9 inches of fun, seeking the slim, smooth, smiling, authentically Thai-tasting geisha guy on the side, macho dancer looking for his lord and master, M Butterfly Wedding Banquet Joy Fuck Club? I am not a Korean dragon lady running down Avenue A on heels with a teapot between my legs shouting, "Where's my tip? Give me my trophy." You want to play with me? You can. Just quit orientalizing, because I ain't gonna change my cotton Calvins for you or my mother if I lose. I ain't gonna fry you an emperor's meal or throw you Eurasia or butterfly you an opera. I'm through giving sex tours of UNICEF countries. Third world is for hunger and Madonna and Angelina Jolie and Sally Struthers. I am not a teriyaki toy, a rice queen's dream, a bowl of soy sauce to dip your meat in. Hit me and watch where the mahjong chips lands. Lust me, I'll soon feel the back of your hand. Play with me then if you think the sweet that's left to the taste in my tongue is enough and not bitter. Love me for this. I forfeit the game, remove my makeup, and call you the winner. So, wow, okay, so I'm gonna do my last poem, which is a new piece of mine, and I gotta pull it up, but let's see, spring cut. So this is like when you get your haircut after the pandemic, right? So spring cut. And it's appropriate because we are in spring. Spring cut. I am sporting these wispy waves of black antenna that belong to an underwater crustacean. Or I look like Beaker from the Muppets. This is not how a sexy guy is supposed to get his groove back after being freshly vaccinated. I am not a figment of Jim Henson, nor am I trying to capture intelligent life cosmic signals from DuPont Circle, but I could use a Cosmo or something sultry. The Rakuya drink special is the Laughing Geisha. And I can't decide if that's racist, Orientalist, or just bad taste. But I order 3 of them to see if it gives me any epiphanies or causes me to tee like a world-class concubine, luring cruisy dudes tucked in their tight Lululemons. It does not give me the teehees, but I do piss a yellow river. What gives me comfort is that I can write the drink tabs off my taxes if I write a poem about it. My Asian hairdresser, Kenneth, cups the straggles of hair that have fallen to the floor like he's holding a little cotton bird and tells me, Regie, this is your hair. Like what? Like I didn't know that? This salon, Kenneth, is full of elderly queer men of every color who have all dyed their hair blonde, except me. And he still cradles my hair in his palms like he found some kitten I abandoned in the woods when I was 9. He raises my thinning hair remnants towards me and then to the sun and over his gilded pompadour, offering condolences as if this were the end of my happy hair days. What Beckett play is this? I suffered a year of pandemonium, and the end of this particular tunnel looks like an off-Broadway revival of Happy Days starring Charlotte Rae. Only it's not Charlotte Rae, it's me, Regie Cabico, buried to my neck with my hair. Kenneth holds my split ends in his palms like prayer to the hair strand deities. their thick manes and maniacal guffaws parting the coiffed, marbled skies. Please tip your bartender. I'd like the sangria, please.
Don't go anywhere. I'm going to introduce Chulisi. Going to perform for a bit, and then we're going to open it up and have we're going to have some kind of conversation. If it's anything like our last one, it's going to turn into like a moment of laughing at people falling on stage somewhere. It's fine. Let's give it up one more time for Regie. I felt like I was back at the for a moment.
I was so there.
And I learned from police. Let's give it up one more time. So next up, my dear, the cover of the book. Looking fabulous. How many years later? We're still, you know.
We're still doing it.
Yes. Andres Chulisi Rodriguez is a poet, author, writer, and actor. Brooklyn born, Harlem living, working on second book and fourth one-man show, prototype of an unmothered maricon. Please give it up for Chulisi.
Yeah, always. Okay, number one, thank you. When you put me on the cover of that book, that was one check off my wish list to be forever etched as an iconic bitch. I wanted to do me right there. Diana Ross, I was like, bitch, pretty honey. That's why the boys always came at me. Okay. My first poem as a poet, someone had challenged me. As a poet, if you are a poet, most of the time they say, what's your intro poem? And I never had an intro poem for like 5 years. I was always saying, like, yeah, you don't got an intro poem. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna write a fucking intro poem. So there's my intro poem. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Chulisi. That means the chulo that takes it easy, and what you see before you is a refined product of the ghetto streets. I was raised by a woman who was a product of her environment. She never healed. She walked around with an H on her chest, wearing her trauma like a scarlet letter. See, now I forgot. Yeah, like a scarlet letter. She never sat me down and talked to me about the birds and the bees. And by the time she did, the version that she told me was not the version that I received. I learned how to talk with my fists long before I knew what a hug was. And I fell in love with the streets. But I soon found out that the streets don't love you unless they're willing to take twice as much as they give. So I gave up my body. You see, love wasn't being served at home, so I was willing to do anything if I can just feel a touch, a hug, a sense of belonging. I gave up my spirit. Because the tribe that I grew up in was trying to mask a heroin addiction through alcoholism. And they were showing it in unwanted kisses and empty promises. Coño, yo me fui para allá. The first time I heard the word faggot, it solidified to me that I would always have to fight for everything that I want in life. That I would always have to show up at the table twice as hard as a woman, 3 times harder than a man to just be compared half of a human person. At 17, I found that it was much easier for me to be in pain than it was in joy. Like it was much more easier for me to identify with crying inside than it was to laugh outside. And I also found out that life was going to be hard. Mine was just guaranteed. You see, being a gay Afro-Latino man meant that I was going to be noticed whether I liked it or not. I also had to find out that I cannot find all of my daddy issues in every single angry thrust that I went through. And being a mother does not mean that you're worthless. I learned that I had a voice, that being gay was not all of my identity. It was not all that I was. See, I will not wear my trauma on my chest, and I will not define myself with 2 ponytails stomping on the floor in defiance. What I will do is heal. What I will do is learn. What I will do is claim war in everything that I do. My name is Chulisi. That means the chulo that takes it easy. Like Reggie, I'm also doing the 30 for 30. myself. And this is one of my 30s. My second one-man show called Prototype of an Unmothered Maricon came from, I'm doing a lot of work on being unmothered. Unmothered is that you have a mother, but she just didn't give you the social skills in which to exist in any form of life. You know, so finding out I was unmothered, I kind of grew into my mom and taking care of her. I was like, all right, we can write about this, another 3 books, but let's go for it. No one told mommy that her back was broken, that her shoulders weren't big enough, that it wasn't meant to carry loads upon loads of others. No one showed mommy how to unpack, that she didn't need to take everything on her journey, that it was okay to stop and rest and breathe and cry. Mommy walked this earth barren. Like a runaway slave constantly looking for freedom, her waking thoughts were just one more day. Un día más, puñeta. No one fed her spirit or her child within. Mommy's cupboards were bare. See, no one told mother that her unspoken pain made her hands heavier when she hit her children. No one told her that all the trauma she carried would be birthed right along each pregnancy that she had. No one taught her that forgiveness helps heal. Shit, no one told mommy she could heal. Rosa Maria Castillo forgot to let go of Puerto Rico. And though Puerto Rico was her soil and Utuado was her vein, it was not going to be her death. She forgot to let go of the man that left her. She forgot to let go of the concept of struggle. She forgot to let go of suffering. Mommy, now in her old age, lives as her mind goes, and what keeps her is Puerto Rico, Utuado, and her name. And it is said with an authenticity that says, yo soy Rosa Maria Castillo, y yo soy de maldito fucking Puerto Rico. Poet that they were like, Dre, your shit is so serious. Nigga, like, I get your shit, like, I get that you rugged and all that stuff, but can you give us some empowerment in your poems? I'm like, all right, it could be happy, it could be happy. I am not simple. I am a building block of experiences, trauma, and hope. I am a farmer excavating through muck, through shit piles from those before me that were scared of cleaning and dirtying their hands. I am work, relentlessly changing to becoming a better me, not just from yesterday, but from an hour ago. And you will never find me naked on the floor in a fetus position, for I plan to be reborn, aware and standing up. I am a song, not just a love ballad, but a full-on orchestra with lights at a stage that demands an audience that fills the stadium. You see, I was born with this raspy, guttural bass voice because I have something to say and I will be heard. I am my mother's child, my father's reminder that there is accountability, that there is a cause and effect. I will show them both that you don't ever have to be a product of what you never had, but what you can be. My vocabulary doesn't hold spaces for I can't, I won't, maybe, impossible. It is full of fuck it, bullshit, and not the fuck today. It holds space for right now, absolutely. I became aware that I will never be a basic bitch. Like whoever went through a war with no gun, a battle with no plans, survived puberty by chasing away monsters with 3 legs, elders of synthetic dependencies, and not have a revolution on their lips. I am a reminder that dull can shine, that life actually does redos, that there is a space and a room for everyone. I fought for this pedestal that in all actuality was not meant for me. I am war. A brown, gay, well-lived body, unapologetically woe man, walking and stepping into knowings that acquired a lifetime of tortures, a bucket full of pushes and shrugs, and backhanded inner voices with a hell lot of fuck you. I am in purpose that shifts and changes blueprints, but never goals. I came here to create tribes, carry hope to those who can't see, give words for those who won't speak, and remind those that are in the way that the space you occupy is borrowed for someone like me that wakes up every fucking day saying, I am here. Chulisi.
Don't go far.
So what we do right now, we're just gonna do like a little conversation, discussion, Q&A. That's fun. Well, I'll ask the first question. I'm interested in sort of, if you could talk briefly, Chulisi, about like how queerness informed your relationship to the cafe. I mean, we see some of that on the video right through the Glam Slams, but
The first time I went to the cafe, I was always a very outspoken gay guy. Like, that's really me all the time. Like, that wasn't me for that day. Like, I really was this extremely flamboyant, hair all over the place kind of guy. I can really recall Julio at the time, who used to run the door.
Yeah.
He was the manager. He was like, a lot of the straight men were taken aback with me. Like, they were really like, they didn't know what to do with me. Like, they really didn't know how to talk to me. They kind of avoided my gaze. They always had the habit of like, when they would squeeze my hand, they squeeze that extra hard to be like, I'm straight, you know, that kind of thing. But as they got to know me, I didn't have a problem really with the staff, but I was having a lot of problem with the kind of people that would come in by accident. Because even if you did a show, they always left the doors open for people who want to come in. And a lot of the straight people, the cisgender that walked in, was they weren't very kind of warm to me. You know what I mean? Like, they were respectable in the sense of, you know, the majority of my people were there, so they knew if they came out of pocket, it would be a situation. Plus, I kind of figured that a lot of people, because I grew up in the streets, a lot of people kind of either they didn't deal with me, or I was like not there. You know, I can recall many times at the Nuyorican where like I would go and visit slams, or I would go and visit like other poet nights, and when they would mention my name, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, we have, you know, this Chulisi." A lot of people would just be like, "Well, that's cute." Okay. It's all right. Yeah.
What about you, Regie? Your early days. I know you taught. We've spoken about how, you know, when you first started going to the cafe, it was like tumbleweed down the streets of Loisaida, but sort of your relationship to queerness and the cafe, like when you first started going.
Well, the reason I'm out is because of the cafe. So as far as how is my queer identity tied to the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, it was a space that allowed me to write for the first time gay love poems. And so that's at that point in my life, and this was before Ellen, this was before Will and Grace. Like it was extremely taboo. I mean, like, I remember artists would be like, you had to just make the decision. You're either going to be an out gay comic poet or you're not, you know. So I think that in the early 90s, you know, it was such a, if you're going to go out there, you're going to go out there. And Miguel Algarin in the book, in the introduction, says, oh, Regie Cabico, and talks about the 9 inches of fun and sexy desires. And so that's in the introduction of the book. And like, I could not go back anymore. And I just, it was a place where I could be and celebrate the 90s multicultural literature at the time, and push and be heard. I mean, I'm a gay Filipino boy, and people are standing up and saying 10, 10, 10, 10.
Follow up on that. I mean, you know, I'm wondering what, I mean, you're Puerto Rican and Filipino, and I'm wondering if, you know, also what, you have some notion of what the politics of the cafe were, and if being Puerto Rican or being Filipino or being coming from colonial conditions, did that, you know, affect your relationship, your knowledge, your thought, your concept of what the poetry would be, or what the space was like?
In my earlier, I started my career at the Nuyorican. Like, my very first one-man show was at the Nuyorican. It was called The Making of a Woman. And I remember at the time that I had to actually give my script in, and they had actually edited it over. And I can recall a lot of some people mention no names, they're no longer there.
Now I'm like, now I want to know.
That they would tell me, do you really need to say this? Or like, can you say it in a different way? And they kind of had to understand because I was a street kid.
Yeah.
They treated me a whole lot more different than they treated the other gay. Like anyone that was like really feminine gay and looked soft, they were spoken to a different way. But because I was a thug, they kind of spoke to me with a, you know, like, do you have to use the word faggot so many times? I was like, it's what it is. I'm talking about the streets. Like no one in the streets gonna look at me and be like, yo, look at that gay man. You know, so, you know, because poets, we write about the time. We write about right then and now, and that's what was going on. It was the 90s. There was a sexual revolution on top of that. There was the whole, you know, down low kind of guy. There was, you know, the thug nigga, you know what? And I was bored of that. You know what I mean? And then they changed their option because when I threw the show, I actually sold out the front and the top and had a couple of celebrities walk in and they were like, would you like to do the show one more time? I was like, no, when is enough? Yeah. At the time, one of my good friends is Mark Anthony. One of my good friends is Lisa. Yeah, so they were at the show. And that's when everybody was like, okay, this bitch on the stage is a whole different, you know, animal and stuff. So I was like, yeah, that's why I didn't do the show the second time. I was like, fuck you.
Regie.
Regie.
Reggie, are you there?
I'm here. I had to blow my nose, and so I spared you that.
He's so authentic.
So that same question about, you know, your relationship with this, you know, kind of mythical identity and identity politics of the Eureka Poets Cafe, did that, you know, affect you in any way? And, you know, the fact that it was a Puerto Rican, supposedly a Puerto Rican cafe and had a certain politics, did that either inspire you, affect you, or did you feel that it was a conflict?
It was the only welcome space for me. I mean, I think it was great to see people of color celebrated and to see just a welcoming environment there. But you know, as far as trying to connect Filipino American roots to the cafe, again, to me, the cafe became my new family. It became the family that I'm going to have, because I knew that by reading these poems, I would lose a lot of my family.
Yeah. So it created a new family there. Could you talk to us a little bit about the Glam Slams? Because they seem so unbelievable. I mean, not unbelievable, so creative. I mean, that someone actually, Emmanuel Xavier had that idea of turning the slams into Glam Slams.
I wasn't that's when I knew that I was a poet. When Manny came up to me, I was the house ballroom part of it. I was a ballroom child. I was walking categories for Butch Queen. Look that up. Walking balls for like body. And Manny was into the balls, but not like that. Like he knew everybody. We all knew the same people. And he had asked me, I would love to throw a ball, but have poetry and suit. And he said, you should be the mother and kind of bring that kind of ballroom audience in. And I'll bring the poetry scene. And let me tell you, the years that we've done it, it was huge. Like these balls would go for like 2 to 3 hours. The people in the categories, like one of the best categories was Best Love Poem Read. The creativity that people, and if you wasn't straight, I mean, right, if you were straight, you wasn't for that ball at all. Like we had straight women. I remember we had the straight women one time. All she wore was 2 dots and a question. You know what I mean? And it's and people waited for that category, baby, and they got home a trophy, and then they had little money cash for the big awards. It became it became to a point that many had to do them yearly because people literally were writing just for that particular ball. Like it was huge.
And I think one of the things that I remember as someone who attended and someone who participated were the judges, right? You really saw, like, you had the Michael Bustos, Hector Xtravaganza,
Right.
Willie Minter gave me my trophies.
Yes.
Like you had, well, these were the judges on the stage, and so you had people that maybe were part of the house scene that walked the ball and like, I'm gonna try out poetry, and poets are like, oh, okay, I'll try to walk a ball. And so you had these communities coming into conversation with each other in ways that I thought was really interesting.
It was very real. Like again, in the category, the ball judges were the ones that kept the category right. If you're coming in fire engine red, you better have fire engine red, not cobalt red, not burgundy red, fire engine red. And then if you was a poet, and you had the Michael Musto, that was about poetry.
Right,
so they really did. I mean, yeah, we had such a good time. You could you just made me live a lifetime.
I think that you also just a fantastic MC for the whole thing, and being able to, like, in the clip, we see how you translate particular terms, like shady. For those of you that don't know what that means, let me translate it for you. So if you were
in a shady way.
in a shady I love it.
And a lot of people, it was a really big safe space for anyone that was LGBTQ. It definitely was. So if you were straight, you really knew your lane. You knew that this was our space. You're gonna stay in the corner. If you don't like us, stay in the corner. Don't be noticed. And just chill. And we never, ever, in this met the most, we never had a fight. We never had an altar. Never. It was such a safe space for everybody.
So what Regie was talking about, the creation of an audience, of a community. I mean, the audience completely kind of was transformed during that time.
They were in it. Then I told Manny, I said, Manny, I don't think anyone will ever accomplish anything that you've done here. Because the first year, it was sold out. After that, we had lines. Like literally, the most of us we had
I waited on
it was an hour and a half. And the ball ended up being 3 hours because you would open up a category. There wasn't 2-3 people, it was 10 people. For that, and you have to allow them, because in ball culture, you have to keep saying, going up once, twice, oop, another person comes in. And then I finish, and we're gonna close up, oop, another person. So you had to keep the flow. It was an amazing. Yeah, it helped a lot of people identify who they were. It was a space where a lot of people chose that time to really express who they were, because when they walked out, a lot of them didn't look the way they walked in. You know what I mean? It's like, like being the Catholic girl where you waited till you got out at home and you lifted up your skirt, you dropped your shirt down, but you was home, your skirt was below. You know what I mean? It was very bad. Changing the bathroom, completely like changing. I'm like, you know. One of the categories was Butch Queen up first time thug punk. You know, that shit like that. Who saw these boys that were boys that walked in and they put on very roughly managed. They put on stockings, you know. They try to look as girly as they could on lipstick. And walking up and with tacos, and you could tell it was and I was like, oh, okay, girl, I see you, mama. It was something else. It was really something else. It was an amazing time to be at the Eureka.
And the family members were there. Do you remember like Algarin, all these other people?
Miguel Algarin, let me tell you what.
Rest in peace.
He would always be at the end of the bar. He always had that one seat at the end of the bar. And when we would throw those balls, you could hear him. That's That's that. And I would be like, he'd be like, Stan, you don't understand. He always was there. He was always there at all the balls. He sat right there. Always.
You won. You won one of the competitions. 2002, right? 2002.
You sure the fuck did. My God. I remember you were thinking because I was like, what's the tea with you? Like, I was like, And then when you started to spit, I was like, oh shit. She can fucking spit. Like, wow. Because not all the poets are good, let's be clear.
No, they're not.
You know, but the ones that did spit, they were really good. Hence. Absolutely.
Yeah, we actually talked about this. So I first attended the Glam Slam before I started hosting at the cafe and Friday nights. One of the first people, so Felice was ever so kind. When she decided to step down, she was very organized. She gave my little composition notebook and was like, I booked the feature poets, the spotlight poets for like the next 6 months, just to get you started. And I was like, thank you so much, because I couldn't think about that. And one of the first people, she was like, I booked people that were going to be amazing spotlight poets that are very self-directed. You don't have to. So the spotlight poet performs for about 20 minutes before the start of the Friday night poetry slam. You want someone that can carry a crowd, that can really set the tone for the evening, that's going to show up on time. That's very important. That you're not going to have to be like, what? Oh, you're in a cat. This is the problem. And one of the first people that she booked was Regie. So that's when I was introduced to the fabulousness of Regie. And I don't know if it was that night or another year that I invited Regie to Spotlight. But you did a performance of a poem where it was a conversation with your mother and there was another poet there with you. And it was like the whole conversation between you and
I remember that.
Yeah, that was intense because he's like, mom, and trying to come out and like what, it moved between two voices. And I was figuring out my queerness, like I was like, oh, I think I'm bisexual. And I was like, I think I am. I wore like an orange poncho, I had long hair, it was a mess. But then when I participated, I was like, no, honey, I'm Dutch. I'm Dutch. But you know, it was like going to the Glam Slams, seeing Reggie's feature and being really inspired by that moment and thinking, wow, the cafe.
Reggie, didn't you get called to open up a category? Because what Manny used to do is he would have a poet open up that category so that the audience knew this is what we're looking for. Didn't you open up once?
I think I did, but I just can't remember.
It's COVID.
It's like, yeah. It's very likely. I want to say yes.
But I wasn't ready for you. When I saw that piece, I literally was like, oh shit. Everybody was like, what the fuck just happened? And then after that, when they opened up the category, a lot of people didn't go up because when they saw the example of what we were looking for, they were like, oh my God.
I'm good. So I invited, when I wanted to participate one year, I invited people, I was in graduate school, so I invited folks to go. Just one person decided to tag along and go. She's not a friend, she was someone that went to graduate school at the same time that I did. And a distinction. This person had an alcohol problem, but decided to get wine. Yeah. I was like, I can handle it. No. So I think she was in the best love conference.
Yes, she started opening.
Yes,
I remember that.
So I'm gonna read this poem, and the poem wasn't good.
It wasn't.
But it was just like, so people felt really inspired being.
The poem wasn't good, but I remember the show was fun because from a girl's perspective, she had a very nice set of titties. I remember when I did, I heard everybody go. Yeah, I remember she took a while with that poem too.
Because she was drinking the wine and she wasn't supposed to.
Don't drink the wine. It's oil. Thank God I remember that. Dios mío, la memoria. That's over 20 years ago, mommy. Yeah, that's over 20 years. Yeah. Shit, we still looking up this. Our skin's still sitting. I don't know if I can wear the same outfit, but I definitely can still move right now.
I get it. Regie, I'm just wondering, you know, how did the cafe change your life, propel your poetry? Because the cafe all of a sudden went viral, it went global, it went to every media.
Well, I was Evert Eden was hosting the Wednesday nights open mic, and I didn't win. And I'm like, this has to be a joke. But then if you win Wednesday, then you get to read on Friday. And I'm like, well, I got to do this. So what was the question again?
How did you get global?
I'll cut to the chase. So what I'm saying is that at this, it was like in the 70s, everyone was a rock star. In the 80s, everyone was a stand-up comedian, performing artist. And in the 90s, it was the spoken word poets. So New York Magazine would go to the Friday nights, and it was a cover, Edwin Torres. It was called The Beats Are Back. And so, and I was photographed, and they called me the Nuyorican Anonymous. They didn't even bother to get my name, but I didn't care. I mean, it was my hand and my profile holding a binder, and I was like the centerfold. There was a tiny picture, like a staple, like on my cheek, and like this is cool. This is the coolest thing, and I'm just a little kid. I'm like, so it changed my life because I became the Nuyorican Grand Slam champion. The first poem that I wrote got published in a major anthology aloud. I got asked to tour on Lollapalooza with Beastie Boys, Smashing Pumpkins. I had a 30-second MTV video. It just exploded for me, and so it did change my life. And at that point, it was the beginning of the next wave of slam poets, because I put myself in the right at the ends, because I'm in aloud. But then you're gonna get the Bosias, the Saul Williamses later, but you'll get the blockbusters. But for me, this was the golden age of slam, because there was no formula to what people were saying. The slam was an open mic. People could read their work and get a 10. It didn't have any of the formula that you'll see subsequently. So,
guys, you have to understand that time, Russell Simmons had came out with the Deaf Poetry Broadway show. Why do you think he got half of those poets? Right off the Nuyorican sets. And half of them were in the house of Xavier, that was Emmanuel Suher Haman.
Yeah.
I can name you right off the top how many of our members of our house became part of that tour. Like, it was that big. Like, it was crazy what was happening. Crazy. I didn't want to be that kind of stuff. I'm gonna say the line for my favorite movie. I wanted to be a star of the videos, Mama. Video. You so get me.
Should we open up?
Yes.
Any Q&As?
There's so much knowledge out there. Anyone would like to comment, ask a question?
You're not required to.
Oh, Felice. Hello, Felice Bell.
Hi, Karen.
Shut your trap.
I'm so proud of you.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I see that in so many ways. I mean, okay, so Felice Bell, blah blah. Oh, sorry. I thought it was I was just asking to go that moment. But I'm ready.
So watching that video of Mike and Nero, right? And the proposed aesthetic of large capital M U, right? I'm curious about how you make a distinction between poet and poet. Like, what is that, right? Because to me, I think of my parents were Caribbean. I'm like, I come from nutrition, like poetry is oral, right? And so this idea of being spoken is not new, right? It's actually historical. But like, as an academic in this, and a practitioner, I'm curious about the line.
Well, I think that it's three ways, right? Like I think for me, it's always like poet / spoken word artist, right? Like there's that connection. I think that there's poetry that is written for the page, there's poetry that's written for the stage, and there's poetry that's written so that it translates across both. And you're gonna get something different from the page than you are when it's on the stage. I think that a distinction, and we've always talked about, I make a very strong distinction between spoken word and slam poetry. I think
that's different.
Yes, I think some people write slam poems, right? I'm gonna write this poem, and I could literally be up here saying, nothing, 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 nothing. Yes. And people are like, yes, it's essential. Yeah. But you're not saying, right? Like you're not, and I don't think that that's, that's not a blanket to all slam poets. I think that, Regie's talking about this particular moment, right? 1996 is that moment. 1996 is when Saul Williams wins, Paul Devlin records the slam. It's like you have Slam Nation, the documentary, and all of a sudden it becomes this global entity that circulates a great deal and that's connected very much to a hip hop aesthetic. Like there's that connection in 1996, and all of a sudden everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to move their arms and be like, yes, I'm gonna write my plaque, and I'm like, not everybody can be sung. Yes, not everybody can be sung.
For me, I know you didn't ask me, but I'm.
Of course.
I teach poetry. I teach workshops, and I tell people, and they've got that question. A spoken word is a poem that can be performed with your whole entire body as a theatrical piece. A poet is a person that can read a piece that's not really meant to be a piece performed, but it can still be heard on paper. You're speaking your poem. You're living it, because speaking is to live it through your body. A poem is just, hi, I'm a poet, and the sun rises in the east, the rays. As opposed to spoken word is someone that can literally have the gift of translating what's on paper, memorize it, and make you feel like you wrote it. That's how I describe it to you. And then there's the slam artist. 25 words to say no. You know what I mean? It's like, that's fabulous. What? You didn't say nothing. He has more metaphors and still didn't say shit. You know what I mean?
Mr. Reggie.
Yes. Spoken word poetry or spoken word is very, 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 very general. Slam poems are 3-minute. I look at them as solo Broadway showstoppers. It's up against the wall moment, high drama, accessible, and that's where I'm running with it. But I won't say spoken word. Like, just because I have no time to be specific. Hey, I'm spoken word.
Right.
To us poets, that's such a deep conversation. Oh.
Well, the whole question of cadence that you were talking about.
I personally do not like, I've never liked, and that's why I stopped going to poetry events.
Yeah.
Because everybody sounds the same.
And then when I tell you that right now, what? If I told you, wait, if it is nothing but love, 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 love. And then the next person comes up and has to say, I'm like, I can't, I can't.
My favorite, yes, my favorite spoken word poets and spoken word poets that slam are those that tell me a story. You can be succinct and write something. Tell me a story and don't play into particular aesthetics and cadence and gesticulations in order to do that. And I don't want to hear you, I'm gonna be deep. Let me have that, I'm gonna be deep moment. I don't want to hear that. If you're gonna, my favorite poets are the ones that say something that sticks with me.
Yeah.
Felice, you wrote a poem. I feel like this is a love pencil, Felice. But because this book is so much about the conversations that we would have in the beginning. If she had not asked me to step in and host a Friday night poetry slam, I never would have written this book. Like I would have had this idea, but everything builds on each other, right? Like everyone here has played a role in helping me think through and write the book. And you have a line in a poem, and if I mess it up, you can tell me. Jazz musicians need to rehearse before they can improvise. Yes? Yeah, that is one of my favorite lines, and I never forget that. And I always think about that when I attend performances, because I'm like, especially poetry slam and spoken word events, because people feel like, oh, I'm gonna get up and I could just be, I could find it and I write, and I'm gonna find that, and I'm like, no, because jazz musicians need to rehearse before they can improvise. You need to master something before you're able to sort of just like, I'm gonna do it off the cuff. But you gotta draw from a well. And if that well is empty, what are you drawing?
Absolutely.
So for me, it's like, I think about that, I think about Travis. Right. Travis's work always moves me.
The one about, we puts his hands out, was the one about the father beating the son.
He put #1 gay son on.
Yes.
So, and these aren't people that, necessarily everybody's gonna know about, but they're people that touch, move you.
Yeah.
And that for me is like, you're able to do that in 3 minutes, man, power to you. And that's why I always ask for Check One by Regie. Again, poems that stay with me, right? And that continue to sort of make me think about things differently.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else who wants to? Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Ay, Dios mío, Padre Celestial.
Yes.
Bye, Reggie. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
They're part of my journey.
Did you want to say goodbye?
Bye, Reggie. Thank you, my love.
Bye.
Bye, Reggie.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for all of your help.
Thank you for your help. Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye. You too.